Initially, I only wanted to be a dutiful Mrs. Asher, but to my surprise, Asher knelt and pleaded for my love. Stella, Orion murmured, hesitating, his gaze dropping to the floor. Last night, he and I had been drunk and lost control. It was the first time Orion, my boyfriend, visited my home. Though my parents disapproved of his humble origins, he had secured a special military academy recruitment and seemed destined for success. In my previous life, Aurora was fixated on marrying into the wealthy Asher family. My mother misattributed the favor of saving Madame to Aurora, paving her path to marriage, but ultimately to a mental institution. This time, Aurora wasted no time, climbing into Orion's bed. Confronted with the chaotic scene of a disheveled bed and the sight of them together, I burst into tears. My mother, enraged, glared at Aurora, her temples throbbing. "How shameless can you be, throwing yourself into a nobody's bed before marriage?" she scolded. Orion, with his pride wounded, averted his gaze. Aurora, always the favored child, accustomed to special treatment and groomed for a wealthy marriage, now faced family scrutiny. Despite the fallout, my mother declared that Aurora would still marry into the Asher family. Turning to Orion, she sneered, "You were Stella's boyfriend, yet you betrayed her for Aurora. We no longer want you as part of this family." Aurora protested, claiming she didn't want to marry into wealth, and that she and Orion truly loved each other. "Right, Orion?" she asked, leaning on him. He nodded solemnly, apologizing to me while pledging his future to Aurora. Under my mother's disappointment and my heartbreak, Aurora married Orion, and I wed Asher, the infamous playboy notorious for his countless flings and untamable nature. My family forced this marriage upon me, unwilling to fund my university education, a dream left unfulfilled in my past life. Since I held no love for Asher, I allowed him to live as he pleased. A month later, I entered the Asher family quietly, moving into their estate. Each married couple lived in their own villa, while the family elders resided in the manor's main building, where everyone gathered for holidays. On our wedding night, Asher leaned casually against the doorframe and smirked. "You saved my mother on purpose, didn't you? Just to marry into my family?" I sat up, meeting his sharp gaze. If anyone had fallen into the water that day, I would have saved them. It wasn't premeditated. "Would you really wish harm upon your own mother?" I countered. "And for your information, I had a boyfriend before you. I didn't marry you for wealth, but because my family forced me to." His eyes narrowed. "So, you abandoned your boyfriend for money?" "My boyfriend betrayed me by sleeping with my sister, who's now his wife," I said coldly. "My family needs money for my brother's wedding. Since love clearly isn't reliable, I might as well marry a wealthy man. Even if there's no love, at least there's security." Asher looked momentarily stunned. "Well, as long as you know your place," he said before his phone rang. Answering quickly, he assured the caller, "I'll be there soon." Before leaving, he handed me a card. "There's 50,000 on this. The password is 6 sixes. "Thank you, be safe," I replied, accepting the card with both hands, feigning the obedience of a dutiful wife. Asher left to meet Issa, his savior and a rising movie star whose charm was undeniable. Meanwhile, I found myself marveling at the luxury surrounding me. The lavish bed, the golden quilt, wealth that dwarfed my family's combined annual earnings. I slept soundly that night. In the morning, the housekeeper, Mama Wong, had already prepared breakfast. "Second, madam, your meal is ready," she said warmly. This life of comfort, where everything was taken care of, felt almost surreal, making me lazier by the day. After breakfast, I headed to the main building to serve tea to the elders. There, I encountered Ophelia, Asher's elder brother's wife, whose family was also well established. She smirked at me. Where's second brother? On your wedding night, you let him leave to meet that star? Such meekness is typical of women from poor families. Madame Asher, noticing my discomfort, intervened. You've endured a lot marrying into this family, she said, removing an emerald bracelet from her wrist and placing it in my hand. Ophelia glanced at her wrist, revealing a bracelet identical to the one her mother-in-law had just given me. It seemed this was the customary welcome gift for the daughters-in-law of the Asher family. Still, I doubted she genuinely reprimanded her own son on my behalf. Her words were likely just for show. Mom, it's a privilege to marry into the Asher family. With your protection, I couldn't be more grateful, I replied, smiling. Though Asher and I married with little understanding of each other, I believed that as long as I continued to improve myself, he might eventually come home more often. The elders of the Asher family appeared pleased, and the weight of the red envelopes in my hand brought a small smile to my face. With nearly 100,000 yuan saved, I realized it might soon be enough to purchase a modest apartment. Returning to the villa, I ran into Asher, who had just arrived, looking exhausted. Thank you for defending me in front of your parents, I said, realizing he must have visited the main house. It's nothing, he replied flatly. Even if we're not truly a couple, we're still partners in this arrangement. Feeling a twinge of guilt about accepting the 50,000 yuan without reciprocating, I handed him a glass of water. You look tired. Maybe you should rest, I offered. Placing a package on the table, he said, This is from my friend last night. I'll go upstairs to sleep. Thank your friend for me, I replied. Opening the gift to find a set of luxurious imported makeup products. Though the brand was familiar to me from my previous life, these items didn't seem as exclusive now as they once were. Nonetheless, the scent of the products felt slightly off, almost ominous. Determined to make the best of my situation, I used the makeup to enhance my appearance for a visit to the main house. Ophelia's eyes lit up as soon as she saw me. What did you do to your face? You look stunning today, she exclaimed. Oh, it's something Asher gave me, I responded nonchalantly, implying it was a gift from his friend. During tea with my in-laws, Ophelia's interest in the makeup grew. Known for her obsession with standing out at social gatherings, she soon borrowed the set. Several days later, she stormed into my villa, her face obscured by a gauzy veil. Stella, how dare you harm me? Look at my face, she shouted, pulling back the veil to reveal acne scars covering her once pristine skin. Feigning innocence, I touched my own flushed cheeks and asked, Was there an issue with the skincare products? Asher said they were a special wedding gift from his friend Isa. You're so naive, Ophelia snapped. Isa is Asher's lover, not some well-meaning friend. I don't care if she's your husband's savior. This is her doing, and I won't let it slide. Before I could respond, Asher entered the yard. Ophelia turned her fury on him, yelling, Look at this. Your precious Isa gave us these products, and now we're both like this. Asher, she continued, her voice trembling with anger. This is your fault for trusting her. She ruined my face. But Asher dismissed her accusations without hesitation. Isa would never harm anyone. She's the kindest person I know. He recounted Issa's history with reverence, how she once saved his life by risking her own, supported her struggling family, and refused anything more than necessary medical expenses from him. To him, she was flawless, incapable of malice. Standing silently to the side, I watched a line of ants marching in the dirt, their industrious movement reminding me of my own quiet resolve. Perhaps it was time to focus on securing my independence, maybe even buying a place of my own. Ophelia, seething, retorted, "Kind-hearted? A kind person doesn't summon a married man on his wedding night or during a visit to his wife's family. A kind person doesn't compete for film roles and kneel in public to play the victim, forcing others to look like bullies." Though she spoke the truth, Asher ignored her outburst. Instead, he coldly insisted, "You must have had an allergic reaction to something you ate. Issa had nothing to do with it." Moments later, Ophelia's phone pinged with a notification. Glancing at it, she sneered, 100,000 when? So that's the price of your loyalty to Issa. It must be nice to have someone willing to pay this much for you. She turned to me with a smug grin, adding, "Too bad your husband doesn't value you the same way." Ash's expression darkened as she walked away, and he grabbed my hand, steering me toward the car. We drove in silence, his face unreadable, though I wondered if he blamed me for tarnishing Isa's image. Perhaps he thought I had orchestrated the entire situation, but even so I stayed quiet, letting the moment pass. Asher pulled the car to a stop outside the hospital. Was he here to meet Isa and have me apologize to her directly? I checked my mobile banking app again, sighing inwardly at the six-figure balance. With that kind of money, apologizing to Isa didn't seem entirely unreasonable. I got out of the car and followed Asher into the dermatology department. Before we entered, a young woman in a yellow dress with flowing curls and a mask hurried toward us in the corridor. "Asher, did you come to see me?" she asked eagerly. "Right?" Isa's mother was still undergoing treatment here. Not wanting to wait, I entered the department alone, leaving Asher behind. For a moment, I had thought it was kind of him to bring me here, but that fleeting impression disappeared quickly. After getting my prescription and medicine from the pharmacy, I walked toward the hospital entrance. "What did the doctor say?" Asher's voice came from behind me. He had caught up, Isa trailing close behind with a hostile glare. "The doctor said it's not an allergy, but a reaction to harmful substances in the product I used. Luckily, I only used it once, so it's not too serious. Some medicine should clear it up," I explained. Then, turning to Isa, I added, "If you're busy, I can head back alone." Isa looked apologetic, though her eyes stayed fixed on Asher. "Miss Stella, I'm really sorry. My other friends loved that set of cosmetics, and I thought it would suit you too. I'll make sure to apologize properly next time." Tears welled up in her eyes as she turned back to Asher. "Do you want to come with me to visit my mom? The doctor says she only has a year or two left." Her delicate voice and mournful expression made her look utterly fragile. I didn't wait for Asher's answer and walked out of the hospital, intending to catch a taxi. But he grabbed my arm, holding it so tightly that it almost hurt. "No, next time. Stella hasn't eaten yet. I'm taking her to dinner first." Asher's grip on my arm felt firm and unyielding. Isa's sorrowful expression tugged at me, but I kept quiet, sensing his irritation. "I'll take you for barbecue," he said as he started the car. As we drove, I thought about the doctor's words. The doctor said it wasn't an allergy, but harmful substances. Could there actually be something wrong with Isa's cosmetics? I wondered aloud. It doesn't matter now, he replied. That set is with my eldest sister-in-law, and she's already taken my money. She probably won't bother testing it further. How can it not matter? My face was affected. You said yourself it's minor and will heal in a few days. Besides, we don't have solid proof the cosmetics were at fault. Even if there were, I'd deal with it. His tone was calm, but his meaning was clear. He would go to any lengths to protect Isa. I glanced at him. Even your sister-in-law saw how you handled this. You paid her off to let it go. He smirked faintly. You're so level-headed. It's as if we have nothing but a professional relationship. You wouldn't care no matter how many women I have. Would you? Keeping my expression neutral, I replied. I promise not to interfere in your life. I won't cause trouble for you or anyone you care about. You can live however you like. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the steering wheel, and he gave me a sharp look. You're really generous, he said, his tone laced with sarcasm. Moments later, my phone chimed. A notification popped up. 100,000 yuan deposited into my account. Shocked, I looked at him, but he simply said, Your face was affected too. Since I compensated my sister-in-law, it's only fair I do the same for you. Grinning, I said lightly, Thank you. I wouldn't mind more harm like this. At the barbecue restaurant, the owner, one of Asher's friends, greeted us warmly, slinging an arm around Asher's shoulder. So, you're bringing your new sister-in-law for dinner? This one's on me. This isn't my new sister-in-law, she's my wife, Asher corrected firmly. I greeted the man politely, shaking his hand. I didn't mind the mistaken title, especially after just receiving another 100,000 yuan. Even if he had called me third sister-in-law, I would have smiled just the same. A few days later, Asher insisted on taking me shopping for clothes. Perhaps he felt guilty. Not one to argue, I let him spoil me. Spending money was much easier than earning it. But while at the mall, we ran into an unexpected pair. I had already picked out 10 dresses and 5 pairs of shoes when we entered another store. Aurora stood in front of a mirror, admiring a small, elegant bag. Orion, I really love this one. Buy it for me, she pleaded. Each bag in the store cost nearly 10,000 yuan, equivalent to half a year's salary for Orion. He hesitated, but eventually relented. Meanwhile, Asher instructed the salesperson to pack every new design on display. You can decide which ones to keep when we get home, he said casually, noticing I seemed a bit tired. Aurora, watching enviously, couldn't hide her frustration. You bought so many bags. Can you even use them all? You're so wasteful. What a poor example of managing a household. Did I overdo it with the shopping today? It's just 10 dresses, 5 pairs of shoes, and a dozen bags. Nothing excessive, right? I said playfully. We haven't even started on jewelry yet. I can see you're a little worn out, so we'll skip trying on the bags for now. They'll be delivered to the house, and you can take your time going through them later. Afterward, we'll head to the jewelry store, and I'll choose a few sets for you. Aurora clenched her teeth so hard, it was as if she were trying to grind them into dust. Her envious glare burned with the intensity of fire. Brother-in-law, you treat my sister so well. Shouldn't I treat my wife well? Who else's wife would you expect me to spoil? I'm not an idiot, Asher replied nonchalantly. Aurora turned her gaze to me, her voice tinged with false innocence. Oh, sister, brother-in-law dotes on you so much. Why are you still upset with me? Are you still thinking about Orion? That doesn't seem fair. I shot her a cold look. Aurora, are you out of your mind? Why would I waste a single thought on someone who doesn't even come close to my husband? Orion isn't as handsome, wealthy, or powerful. And let's not forget the most important point. He slept with my sister. What on earth is left for me to think about? His unimpressive height? His measly monthly salary of 2,000 yen? Or his talent for betrayal? Aurora's face turned red with fury. Stella, you've become so materialistic. You never used to care so much about money. Orion, standing next to her, looked visibly uncomfortable. At least I reek of money instead of poverty, I shot back. Are you buying that bag or not? If not, I'll ask the salesperson to wrap it up for me. Aurora seethed in silence. Orion grabbed the bag from her hands, initially moving to toss it onto the sofa, but then hesitated, clearly remembering its price. With an irritated sigh, he placed it down gently and dragged the still fuming Aurora away. You really don't hold back, Asher said with a smirk, picking up the abandoned bag. Turning to the salesperson, he added, No need to wrap this one. Sorry for the scene. As the bags were being packaged, Issa walked into the store, her face lighting up when she spotted us. Asher, are you shopping for bags too? She asked, her tone full of pleasant surprise. Yeah, Asher replied casually. The director of my next movie asked me to prepare some appropriate personal items. You know my situation? I don't have anything suitable, Issa said shyly, hesitating before continuing. Take a look around, Asher offered. If you see something you like, I'll get it for you. Issa shook her head. I can pay for myself. You don't need to spend money on me, she said, lowering her gaze demurely. There's no need for formalities between us, Asher insisted. Issa bit her lip and glanced at me, her voice soft, but her expression unwavering. I always say I don't want Asher's help, but he's too kind. Like on your wedding night. My mum's health was deteriorating, and I panicked. I called him, and he rushed over right away. Though her words seemed apologetic, they carried an undercurrent of pride. She wasn't sorry. She was boasting. I smiled politely. Oh, Miss Isa, my mother-in-law often says Asher has been compassionate since childhood. Even stray cats and dogs could count on him for a meal from his plate. Let him pay for you. It's not a big deal. He has more than enough. Don't feel shy. As for that night, he already explained it to me. It was a life or death situation. What if your mother hadn't made it? And there was no one to take care of the arrangements. I completely understand why he went. I'm kind-hearted too, so feel free to reach out if you ever need anything. Asher turned to me with a confused expression, only to grin like a fool, clearly thinking I was praising him. Issa's expression darkened, her lips tightening as if she were biting back an insult. True to form, Issa picked several unique bags that had already been wrapped for me. You can take these. Stella doesn't need so many, Asher said, handing them over without consulting me. Though I constantly reminded myself that Asher was just my employer, and his money justified my patience. Moments like this, when he ignored me to cater to Isa, left me quietly frustrated. That frustration led me straight to the jewelry store, where I splurged on gold pieces, knowing they'd hold their value if I ever needed to sell them. When we returned home, Asher seemed to notice my sour mood for the first time. Stella, are you upset over the bags? He asked, studying me. I stayed silent, and he pulled out a sleek black card. This is a shopping card with no spending limit for the mall. Use it for whatever you want, he said. Suspicious. I eyed him carefully. Don't treat me like a fool. I've never even heard of a card like this. He smirked. Take it. The mall belongs to me, but keep that a secret, he replied. I accepted the card, stunned. My irritation melted away instantly. No wonder he was so wealthy. He owned the entire mall. For the first time, I saw Asher in a new light. Beneath the playboy exterior was a sharp, talented businessman. You're really incredible, I said sincerely. What did I do in my past life to deserve marrying someone as brilliant and successful as you? Asher blushed, clearly pleased by the praise. As time passed, we grew used to living together. What began as a cold, distant arrangement evolved into shared meals and easy conversations. One evening, Asher's friend Dash called me. Sister-in-law, brother Asher is drunk. Can you come pick him up? Asher wasn't one to drink excessively, so this was surprising. When I asked, I learned he was negotiating a real estate deal. The contract was ready, but the other party had insisted on a dinner meeting and plied him with drinks, leaving him thoroughly intoxicated. I quickly drove to the location. Upon arrival, Dash whispered, "This is the first step in the real estate deal. Everything was agreed upon, but now they're making things difficult for Brother Asher." Entering the private room, I introduced myself calmly. "Hello, I'm Stella, Asher's wife. I'll drink the wine in his place. Is that acceptable?" I asked, with a polite smile. I glanced at Asher, who was slumped over the table, and then at the man seated at the head of the table. For this deal, Asher had set aside his pride. A reminder that his carefree persona was likely just a facade. In my past life, I had trained my drinking tolerance while helping Orion climb the ranks. Even when excessive drinking caused severe health issues, I never earned his sympathy. Drawing on that experience, I downed glass after glass without flinching, finishing in less than 5 minutes under everyone's astonished gaze. I downed an entire bottle of white wine in one go. "Mrs. Asher, you're truly a remarkable woman," the man at the head of the table remarked, eyeing me with a mix of admiration and envy. He glanced at the unconscious Asher slumped beside him. "I heard your marriage with General Manager Asher was arranged by his mother, and that he's in love with someone else. I never imagined you cared for him this much." "Thank you for the compliment," I replied politely. The man nodded, then handed over the signed contract. I had expected him to hesitate, but was surprised when he signed it without any fuss. "General Manager Asher is unconscious. Once he's awake and reviews the agreement, we'll return a signed copy to you. If there's nothing else, I'll take him home now." "Of course. Goodbye, and make sure to take good care of General Manager Asher," the man said, waving us off. I helped Asher to his feet and guided him to the car. On the way home, I remembered something I had read about drunk people being at risk of choking in their sleep. So I stayed by his side to ensure he was safe. "Stella, my wife, why don't you like me? Why do you give me away so easily to other women?" Asher muttered. His drunken voice slurred as he shook me. "Stop shaking me," I snapped, trying to free myself. "Say you like me and I'll stop," he said, his flushed face surprisingly serious for someone so inebriated. "Fine," I said, trying to placate him. The moment I spoke, he leaned in, and his masculine scent mixed with the aroma of wine overwhelmed me. His lips pressed against mine, and I lost track of time as we kissed. Before I knew it, He had fallen asleep on the bed. My face burned as if on fire. I traced his features gently. His brows, his eyes, his lips. Asher, can I let myself like you? Do you feel the same about me? I whispered before exhaustion overtook me, and I drifted off beside the bed. The next morning, his voice woke me. Stella, why are you in my room? He asked, staring at me in confusion. You were drunk last night. I stayed to make sure you didn't get hurt, I explained, handing him the contract. Check if everything is in order, I added before leaving the room without waiting for his reaction. A short while later, Asher appeared barefoot, his expression a mix of surprise and curiosity. Dash told me everything about last night, he began. He said you were like a goddess descending from the heavens, effortlessly sweeping away all obstacles and leaving behind a legend. It was just some wine, nothing special, I said dismissively. I transferred 200,000 won to your account. You deserve it, he said. Thank you, General Manager Asher, I replied with a smile, though the words felt hollow. I had hoped for something else. A hug, perhaps, or words of genuine gratitude. Instead, there was only the cold transaction of 200,000 yen. I exhaled deeply, forcing myself to let go of my expectations. If love wasn't part of the equation, at least I had money. I thought my heart had turned to stone, unfeeling and unbreakable, until Isa showed up at my door. Miss Stella, I came here specifically to apologize. The skincare products I gave you caused an allergic reaction. I'm truly sorry. Before she could finish, Ophelia stormed out, her voice loud and furious. Oh, look at that! The mistress has the audacity to show up at the house now. Stella, why are you just standing there? Do you want to invite her in for tea? Isa's face crumpled as she stammered, I didn't. Asher and I are just. Before she could finish, she stumbled backward, looking as fragile as a reed bending in the wind. Out of nowhere, Asher appeared and caught her in his arms. I chuckled softly, the sound bitter. I was such a fool, I muttered, watching them. They're still holding each other. How shameless! Ophelia's outraged voice echoed through the yard. Asher shot her a warning glance, but didn't release Isa. Just then, a servant arrived. Young master, second madame, and Miss Isa, the old madam requests your presence for dinner in the main building. Still holding Isa by the arm, Asher led her ahead of me as if they were the real couple. I followed from a distance, watching their intimate gestures. A dull ache throbbed in my chest, and even the sight of my growing bank balance couldn't ease the sting. Stella, come quickly! My mother-in-law's cheerful voice broke through my thoughts. She took my hand and guided me to the table. I asked the maid to prepare your favorite braised beef and pork. You've been looking so thin lately, she said, ignoring Asher and Isa as if they weren't even there. Asher led Isa to a seat across from me. My mother-in-law glanced at Isa with a faint smile. Oh, I nearly forgot we had a guest. You must be Miss Isa. You're quite pretty, though not as lovely as our Stella. I've heard you're an actress, and a talented one at that. You must also be very well-mannered and sensible. Surely you'd never do anything inappropriate or immoral, right? Isa looked stunned, her eyes filling with tears as she glanced at Asher, as though seeking comfort. Miss Isa, did I say something offensive? My mother-in-law continued, her tone sharp. You wouldn't want to ruin your career by being labelled a mistress, would you? It would be such a shame to lose both your reputation and your fortune. That's enough, Asher shouted. slamming his chopsticks onto the table. Mom, did you invite Isa to dinner just to humiliate her? She's not a mistress. She's my savior. She's had a hard life, bearing the burden of her entire family. Why make it harder for her? My mother-in-law sneered. Oh, so it's the Asher family's fault that her life is difficult. If it weren't for you, would her mother still be alive? Would she have access to the resources she has now? And you dare accuse me of making her life hard? She pointed at me. Stella has always been humble and understanding. Yet here she is, forced to endure the humiliation of a mistress showing up at her doorstep. You, Asher, are a disgrace. Not only do you fail to protect your wife, but you openly support another woman. Don't you think that's making things difficult for Stella? What has she done wrong? Does marrying you mean she has to endure such humiliation? My mother-in-law's words hung in the air as I silently ate the food in my bowl, trying to compose myself. A single tear fell into my meal, but I quickly wiped it away, forcing my face back into its usual calm expression. It wasn't even the worst grievance I'd endured, yet having someone voice my pain so openly broke my resolve. I couldn't help but think, I really haven't done anything wrong. No, that wasn't true. I had made a mistake. I had fallen for him, and the one who falls in love first always loses. Mom, Asher began, his voice steady, but devoid of emotion. The only reason I married Stella was because she saved you. You forced me to marry her because of that favor. Yet the one who saved my life, my Isa, is left to suffer. How is that fair? He didn't even glance my way as he held Isa's hand and turned to her. Isa, we don't need to stay here for this. Let's go. I'll take you out for dinner. I clenched my fists beneath the table, digging my nails into my palm to ground myself. The sharp pain was the only thing keeping my emotions in check. You fool! Ophelia shouted, slamming her hand on the table. You're so blind to Isa's manipulations. You deserve someone like her. You don't deserve Stella. She's too good for you. Stella, let's leave him tomorrow. Don't stay with him and put yourself through this anymore. Even if you get divorced, you'll still be my daughter. I'll adopt you as my goddaughter, and no one will dare to bully you. She turned to me, her face softening. We'll demand 500,000 won in alimony from him. It's unfair for you to walk away empty-handed. You'll lose a lot, but it's better than staying in this situation. Thank you, Mom, I said, tears welling up. I hadn't cried like this in years, yet her kindness overwhelmed me. Unlike my own mother, who always favored Aurora no matter what I did, or Orion's mother in my past life, who only acknowledged me after I bore a child, this love was unconditional. It was the kind of love that I had never known. I hugged her, my tears falling silently. Mom, when did I say I wanted a divorce? Asher's panicked voice interrupted. He released Isa's hand and walked over to me. Stella, I never wanted to divorce you, and I don't have 500,000 won to give you. I don't need your 500,000 won to divorce you, I said, cutting him off. My tears had stopped, replaced by the cold resolve I'd honed over years of disappointment. I didn't want to analyze why he was so reluctant to let me go, or why he claimed not to have the money. It no longer mattered. I had fallen in love, and because of that, this marriage couldn't continue. Staying would only doom me. Stella, you want a divorce over a single meal? Are you crazy? Asher exclaimed, his voice rising. Yes, I'm crazy, I replied firmly. And that's why I want a divorce. Saying the word divorce out loud only strengthened my resolve. I ignored Issa's delighted expression, an Asher's mix of disbelief and desperation. Later, I had a long conversation with my mother-in-law. I told her how unhappy I had been throughout the marriage and my desire to leave. She tried to persuade me to stay, explaining that her comments at the dinner table were made in anger, but she ultimately respected my decision. Soon after, I moved out of the villa and into a dormitory at school. During that time, Asher was consumed by his real estate projects, and we didn't see each other again until much later. "Stella," Asher said as he leaned against his car outside the school, his striking looks drawing whispers from passing students. I didn't want to attract more attention, so I quickly got into the car. He drove us to a nearby cafe. "Stella, I only feel gratitude and admiration for Issa. If I truly loved her, I would have married her. You know me. If I didn't want to marry you, not even my mother could have forced me." I stirred my coffee slowly, ignoring the anxiety in his voice. "Do you think Issa's life-saving favor is genuine?" I asked calmly. I looked into it. The surveillance footage from that day shows that even without Issa's so-called intervention, the car wouldn't have hit you. And the driver didn't harm Issa either. She fell on her own and got a small scratch. I slid a folder across the table. I also investigated the driver. It turns out he's Issa's childhood friend. Small world, isn't it? "What are you saying?" he demanded, his voice a mix of anger and curiosity. I had expected him to defend Issa blindly, but he looked genuinely troubled. "You don't have to take my word for it. Here's the footage and information about the driver. Check for yourself," I said, rising to leave. "Stella, don't go," Asher said, grabbing my hand. His eyes were wide with desperation. "Can we not get divorced?" "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've grown used to having you around," he admitted, his tone almost pleading. "I don't want you to be sad or unhappy. I want to be close to you, but I keep pretending I don't care. I don't know if this is what it means to like someone, but the thought of you leaving, of you being with someone else, drives me insane. Stella, give me another chance." "Asher," I began, my voice steady. "Our marriage wasn't built on love. Over the past year, we've had some good moments, but most of the time, you ignored me, and I pretended it didn't bother me. In truth, you've never really wronged me. From the start, we agreed to be partners in private and a couple in public. I just got greedy and wanted more than what we had. But without a sense of security, I can't handle that greed." I paused, my voice softening. "If I ever decide to live with someone, it will be with a person I love completely, without any ulterior motives. That person could be you, or someone else. If we want to give ourselves a real chance, we need to end this flawed marriage first. Only then can we start over." I extended my hand to him. "Hello, I'm Stella." Asher took my hand with a small smile. "Hello, I'm Asher." 3 years later, after completing my postgraduate studies overseas, I returned to China. As soon as I stepped off the plane, a familiar figure appeared before me. "Welcome back, Mrs. Asher," he said warmly.